So, as I was just kind of looking through some news and just reading some stories, I find this little gem that led to another little gem. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to get into it. And if you're not listening to the Lemon Sour program, you're behind. You're behind. Because once again, we're ahead of the curve. Donald Trump is right. The Panama Canal should be American. President-elect Donald Trump's recent lament that the United States ceded control of the Panama Canal to Panama under the Carter administration is both strategically sound and historically resonant. Trump, the most consequential conservative president since Ronald Reagan, shares with the Gipper both an instinctive understanding of U.S. national interests and, more specifically, a healthy skepticism about the logic of ceding the American-built Panama Canal. This article, and this is just briefly goes into the Panama Canal, our ceding it to Panama, and Donald Trump's skepticism of that and his relation with Ronald Reagan, whom he says Jimmy Carter lost his presidency because he ceded the Panama Canal. Now, there were multiple other reasons. There was malaise. That's a word that you guys probably haven't heard in this day and age, but if you're as old as me or older, you know what malaise is. You also know what stagflation is. We're kind of living through a little bit of that now with inflation in some parts and stagflation in others. But this story goes along with what I've been pointing out here for a couple weeks, that what we're seeing is a new Trump-Monroe doctrine. And I'm going to bring up just one part of this article quickly, and then we're going to go to another one. Trump's comments suggesting a possible American reacquisition of the canal were met with predictable howls from Washington think tanks and even communist propaganda rags. Yet our 45th and 47th president, much like our 40th president before him, possesses an innate sense of America's core national interest which seemed to elude Washington's great and good. As Trump returns to the Oval Office, the discernment will find a world in desperate need of an American president willing to pursue controversial causes for the strategic advantage of his country and the safety of his citizens. And that's something that maybe some people aren't taking into account. The president doesn't have to run for re-election. There are certain things that he can do without worry. Now, as I was reading that article, because as you start reading articles, you find them in your feed and things just start to snowball. And this article came up from CNN, which is so close. It's so close to understanding. It's not quite there. It discounts him and the doctrine overall as well as Trump. It's the mainstream media, but they come so close. Trump wants to redraw the map of the Western Hemisphere, which I've been pointing out on this show for a couple weeks now. He is clearly trying to create a Western Hemispheric doctrine. I want to get to a specific part here. Here it is. What is Trump's doctrine? Early in U.S. history, President James Monroe established the Monroe Doctrine, which was tucked into his 1823 message to Congress and essentially warned European powers against further colonization in the Western Hemisphere. As he was overseeing construction of the Panama Canal, President Theodore Roosevelt expanded the Monroe Doctrine with the Roosevelt Corollary to argue that the U.S. had a responsibility to help countries in the Western Hemisphere. Trump's usually isolationist rhetoric would seem to contradict the idea of a U.S. as a protector of the West, and his comments complaints about Canada, Panama, and Mexico all revolve around the idea of the U.S. as being cheated. That Trump refused, when asked by a reporter to rule out American military to obtain the land in either Greenland or Panama, could give a whiplash to Americans who recall his promise during presidential campaign to keep U.S. out of wars. But the lack of any specifics around the obtaining or annexing of Greenland or Panama suggests these ideas are very much in the idea stage and should be taken seriously. Because as this article, the CNN article, and of course everything will be linked, as this CNN article points out, the United States has been expanding since the beginning. That's what we do. Ever since landing at Jamestown and Plymouth Rock, all the way to the Louisiana Purchase, Manifest Destiny, Hawaii and Alaska, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Marshall Islands. The U.S. does have experience in buying land from Denmark. It bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark. This should not be taken with a grain of salt. This should not be taken with a grain of salt. The president is very serious about redefining, reimagining the Trump-Monroe Doctrine. That's clear to me. To me, it's perfectly clear that this is not a joke. This should be taken very seriously. The president has a Trump-Monroe Doctrine that's being updated for the 21st century. It includes Mexico, Greenland, Panama. You're going to start to see Cuba come up in the news. Watch me. Watch my lips. You will see Cuba start appearing in the news. There's a reason Marco Rubio became Secretary of State. It's not so he could deal with Russia and Ukraine. That's so he can go to Panama and Mexico and Cuba and Venezuela. In one of the previous articles that I had in a previous video, I spoke of it sounds like there's already been back-channel communications between the upcoming Trump administration and the Venezuelan administration of Maduro, so that Maduro will limit his migrants going across the Darien Gap into Panama, which, if we had military bases in Panama, would be our first stopping point. We could possibly stop some people in the Darien Gap, just saying, from going up Central America into Mexico. There's already rumors that that's taking place. Rubio is a shoo-in to be confirmed. And clearly he is going to be more of a Western Hemispheric centered Secretary of State. We are seeing a Western Hemispheric centered foreign policy in many ways. Yes, he's going to be dealing with Russia and Ukraine and China, Japan, Korea, and all of our allies overseas and all of our adversaries. But you can clearly see that what he's doing right now is he is building a fortress around the Western Hemisphere. The economic needs of the Western Hemisphere will be found in the Western Hemisphere for the most part. That's what he's ensuring. Oil, gas, rare earth minerals, things like that can easily be found in Greenland. Canada is rich in these minerals as well. So is the United States. If you remember back in the 1990s when Bill Clinton went on this rash of creating national parks after national forests after national refuges, most of those were sitting on top of large national natural resource deposits. It's clear to me CNN came so close to actually saying it. But they can't help it. They can't help themselves. They are who they are. So they can't take Donald Trump seriously. Well, they damn well better, because things are going to change in the Western Hemisphere. And here are his statements, and I want to end because one of them is such a Donald Trump thing to say. It's such a Donald Trump thing to say. I love it. It made me laugh out loud hard. Obtaining Greenland from Denmark, Donald Trump said, quote, They should give it to us because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the world, end quote. Reclaiming the Panama Canal from Panama. Quote, we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China, and they've abused it, end quote. Turning Canada into the 54th state and pushing hockey great Wayne Gretzky as a candidate for governor. Quote, Canada is subsidized to the tune of $200 billion a year plus other things. And they don't essentially have a military. They have a very small military. They rely on our military, end quote. And that part is true. And this is the part that made me laugh out loud. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful ring. That covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America. What a beautiful name.
Gulf of America is a beautiful name. It's a great name. Wonderful name. We're going to put it on there. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to love it. All the people are going to think it's great. I love our president. I think he's hilarious. There's times where I think he's almost a stand-up comedian. He's funny. He's a heck of a funny guy. But he's also serious. Got to be taken seriously. Serious is the way to be.
Yeah. I love that. I'm sorry, that tickled me. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh. Put me in a good mood. Point is, people need to take this seriously. What he's doing in the Western Hemisphere is game-changing. We're unprecedented. It's going to be unprecedented times. We live in unprecedented times. Could we see American territorial expansion in the Western Hemisphere? Possibly. Could we see a Puerto Rico become a 51st state? Perhaps a Guam, a 52nd? Maybe the Marshall Islands? Wouldn't that be crazy? I'm not against Puerto Rico going for statehood. Being a territory is like being the nicest guy in prison. Who cares? This way you would have actual rights, states' rights. People worry about the congressional impact. I'm not worried about that. Again, Trump is creating a new Monroe policy, a new Monroe Doctrine, a Trump-Monroe Doctrine for the 21st century, and we're watching it start right now. I appreciate you swinging in here, listening to me. We're going to catch you next time.